I should be live. Let me go double check everything. Oh, now my computer's thinking real hard about something. I should. Yep, I heard my own self. All right, we are good to go. Well, hi friends. Welcome back to Daily Sews and Stuff. I'm Brandolyn Daly, and this is part 4 of our Affinity Designer live classes, learning to use Affinity Designer for pattern adjusting in order to project our patterns. And we want to adjust our patterns digitally so that we can project them without ever having to use any paper or anything. There's a giant red bar across the bottom of my screen. That seems bad. Yeah, this seems not good. Let's see what's going on. Hey, I see a comment from Jennifer. Y'all let me know if you can still hear me, because my computer just had some little minor freak out just now. Good evening, Elizabeth. It's nice to see you guys. Okay, if there's still comments coming in, then I'm guessing my computer's momentary freak out was all good? All right, awesome. Awesome. Okay, let's keep going then. So we are sort of wrapping up this series right now. This is going to be the last video I plan to do like this. Next Sunday in my Facebook group, hi Mimi, we're going to do sort of a wrap up where we can do a Facebook room. That way we can all be in there together. We can see each other's faces. We can see each other's screens, and we can do some sort of troubleshooting. You know, if you've come across a problem that you have and you want to, awesome, Diane, thank you so much. And you want to show me, you know, what the problem is so that I can maybe help you walk through it, then that'll be the time and place to do that. So that will be next Sunday, the last Sunday in February at 8 p.m. Central in my Facebook group, which is www.facebook.com/groups/dailysews, DAILEY. And those links should be in the description box below too. We talked about doing Zoom classes, and that is still a very definite possibility, but that will be this summer if we are able to make all that happen. So I think that's all the housekeeping stuff out of the way. Let's just sort of jump in to the things I want to show you today. And before we totally jump in, okay, I will say this one thing. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to look at how to draft your own pattern, specifically circle skirts. And there is a link in the description box to a video that Mariah Pattie put out. I love following her. She does some really fun things. And one of these days I'm going to actually attempt some historical costuming. But she patterned these 12 circle skirts for herself and put out a video about how she did it and how all the math works and everything. And so I thought that's really cool, but that was a lot of paper you just used. And then you have to figure out how to store them. And then what happens if your weight fluctuates and you want to alter them? So I thought, I have to be able to do this on Affinity Designer. It has to be possible. So I figured out how to make it possible. There's one small hiccup, and I will show you guys when we get there. But it's the same complaint that I've seen several times about Affinity Designer, is that there's no way to measure a curved line. And it is true. I have searched all over the internet, and you can't do it in Affinity Designer. You can, however, submit a request for them to add that feature. So if anybody else would like to join in that request submission, go ahead. You can go through the Affinity Designer website and do that. So, all right, let's do some pattern adjusting first, and then we'll save the pattern drafting for last. And obviously a circle skirt is a very simple pattern, but you can certainly go much more complex if you know how to do that drafting. All right, let's see here. So I'm going to start with, I made myself some notes this time, so hopefully we can stay on schedule. We're going to start with this. So I'll show you how to add an artboard first of all. Let me delete this one and I'll show you guys how to add one. So you go right here to the Artboard tool and you just draw out the artboard that you want. And when you do that, it kind of gives you a little bit of a working space over here and then the artboard over here. And you can use the layers. This layers tab right here is super, super important. There's a lot you can do over here. And so over here, I can do something like, I'm going to pull out that smallest size, whatever, extra small. Okay, so I'm going to pull out the extra small and work with that. And so I'm going to name it extra small. Or I could name it the name of this pattern and then put a layer in. Something that we also can talk about quickly is within a layer, you can have a group, and that can help you kind of find things. And you can also have within the layer, you can have sub layers, and that can help you move things around too. It can help you move things around all at once rather than one at a time. And I think I've gone over this in a few other videos, so I think you can kind of go back and watch that. If I have left all of you in the dust with that, then let me know and we can talk about it in just a few minutes. All right, so what I might do if I'm going to pull out this pattern, I decided I needed the extra small of this, so I'm going to cut the extra small from here, and then I'm going to go over to the artboard, and I'm going to paste it over there. Okay, so that's that piece. And then I'm going to go to this next piece right here, and I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to put this over here. Oops, I didn't do it in the artboard correctly. That's okay, I can drag it over there. That solved that problem. And then I actually started working with it already right here. So I'll just do that and put it over there. Oh, come on, cooperate with me. There we go. So then you can see that if you've got an unlayered pattern, it's easy to just pull out what you need, and then over here you can make different layers. So I could say on this artboard, I could give it a layer. Right here is where you can edit all layers, and then right here is where you can add a new layer. So I'm going to add a new layer, and since Artboard was highlighted, it's going to add it on there, and I'm going to call this one I don't know, words. And then while this is highlighted, I can go over here and I can grab all these words that are important and drag them over here. And it should, nope, it didn't. That's okay. It didn't put it in that layer I wanted it to, but I can just grab it right here and pull it down till it's highlighted words right here, and it'll be in that layer. And so that's how you can kind of work with the layers and get things there. Now, if I want to turn off, here, let me grab a couple more things just so it'll make sense. I'm going to cut from there, oops, and I'm going to paste over here. Okay, so there's several things on my words layer now, right? If I want to turn all the words off at once, then I can do that. Okay, but the real reason I chose this particular pattern is because of the interesting way that these rectangles are done. Now, it's not a problem with the poncho shape. If I double click that, I get my nodes here, and I can adjust this shape any which way that I need to make it how I need it. If I go to this rectangle, which came from right here, it's actually created as a rectangle. And so I don't have the same ability to change the nodes like I did before. Now I can resize this rectangle, but I might not be able to do, the things that I wanted to do with it. So right here, we can click Convert to Curves, and now it's nodes, and the problem is solved, and I can do anything I need to do with this. If I want to add a node right there and break it right there and, you know, somehow do something with it like this for whatever reason I can. Ooh, I didn't actually break it on both sides today. Okay, so that's an easy thing. All you have to do is click convert to curves. But then there's rectangles like this one. Now this one is fixed now because I already fussed with it some. But if we go over here, we can see where it's not fixed. So if we double click on this, it's not a rectangle. It's not a rectangle. It's actually, you can't convert it to curves. But if you try to start messing with this, weird things happen. And it's because if we zoom, here, let me undo those things. If we zoom way in, we can see that there's actually two nodes, one on the inside and one on the outside. So the way I fixed this was I deleted all the inside nodes. And you have to be zoomed in super far to see them, which is kind of a pain when you're scrolling all the way across. Delete that one, and then go down. And that one's already deleted because of just the way the lines work. But now it's a solid rectangle, and I might not want that. So if I go back to my move tool, I can tell it right here to switch. So right now it says that the line is clear and the fill is pink. And if I ask it to switch that, it now made the line pink and the fill clear. And then if I go over here, I can see that it's a very tiny line. So if I change that to 10, that's made it thick enough that I can see it now. And my problem is solved, and I can do whatever I want to with this to make it whatever shape I need, and it will not be a problem. All right, so that's everything I wanted to show you on this. Let me switch back to you guys and see if there's any questions or anything. If I left anybody completely in the dust. All right, looks good. Let's go back. Probably I should click the transition button first. There we go. Let's go back. No, I don't want to save anything. All right. So that's the last thing. Right here, I made myself some more notes. Okay, so when you've got a pattern completely done, you've done all the big alterations you want to do in order to make it fit you, how do I get it ready to project? And I went over this a bit in the first video, but I'm going to go over it a little bit more now. So because I like to mess around with things and do things differently sometimes, for this one I made individual artboards for individual pieces of fabric. And I did it because I first took, I think it was 3 different patterns, and separated it by color of fabric / interlining, so that I could make a whole set where I was mashing a bunch of stuff together. So I put it in each color, and then I gave myself the fabric rectangle to work within and Tetrised into that piece. And so I wanted to be able to sort them all first, and that's mostly why I did it like this. Also, I was just experimenting with what it would look like when I exported it, and all it does is it makes each one a different page. So no big deal. So if we look, so one of the things that I like to do is I like to really, really simplify the font and the things that are written on here. Like you can see, yes, I left the stuff that the pattern designer wrote because it is important, but I really wanted to see cut one on fold really clearly. And then here I kind of took some of the extra stuff out. I left the seam allowance there. You know, sometimes it's nice to have that kind of information. Oops. With the peg legs, I think I ended up deleting a lot of stuff because a lot of the pieces were really small. I mirrored this one to fit it better in where I wanted it, and it mirrored the words too, but that was fine. Cut 2 is still readable enough to me there. And I really don't care about the rest of that when I'm cutting out. So Anyway, for these, I had unfolded them, but then I decided I wanted to cut them on the fold in the end. So I just lined my fold line up right there with the edge of my fabric. That way it would, and you can see I gave myself that guideline right there so I could really get it right and snap it to that. So that was really helpful. That's how I laid that out. And so when you go to mess with font, sometimes it looks really weird. And in fact, I already closed that other pattern, and I shouldn't have quite yet. Because it will look really weird sometimes. And sometimes you have to delete almost like duplicates in order to get down to what you want to mess with. But I've shown you guys plenty of times how you delete things. And so if you look at this one, you can see that like this letter is pretty much being treated like a curve. Like I can move this like this. And so for these, in order to, oop, that was the wrong button. For these, in order to make it bigger, I had to highlight all of the, oh, fine, you move away then. I had to highlight all of those letters and then drag them bigger and smaller like this. Other times, it's actually a text box. And when it's actually a text box, come on. There you go. When it's actually a text box, you can change the font size up here. And so you can go and you can tell it you want it to be, you know, huge. But if you look, what happened was it's still all, the text box didn't change, just the font inside it did. And it gets really scrumbly, to quote my 5-year-old. So I can make that box bigger, but that hasn't really solved my problem because the words are still on top of each other. If you go all the way down here to the end, this still says 48 point font for the space between the things. So if you change this to match what's over here, then it will suddenly start looking like you can actually use that. And you can always change the shape of the text box to, you know, fit it better in your space. Okay, so that was talking about font and changing that to be, what you want it to be. And I showed you how to do artboards. So for another pattern that I did, okay, let me back up. Affinity Designer will let you make an artboard as big as you want to. When we moved into this house, I made an artboard that was to scale the size of my house, or well, bigger than my house. And then I drew my house to scale in Affinity Designer. I mean, that's like, I don't even remember, like 30 feet, I don't even remember. So a lot of space. But Adobe Reader will only let you open up something that is 200 by 200 inches or smaller. So on this particular pattern, I chose to put each piece of fabric on a different artboard, which translated to a different page in Adobe, and it was fine. Each artboard was 200 by 200, so it was 4 pages. Well, I did another sewing project, and I did it a little bit differently. I actually had it all on one page and just had my artboard sized to be everything. And when I went to open it in Adobe, it wouldn't open. Well, it would, but it cut off a lot of my pattern because it was too big. And so I went back into Affinity Designer and I made it into 2 pages. And I titled these page 1 and page 2, but these are just separate artboards. These are just, see right there, it tells you it's just an artboard. And then on each artboard, I just put what I wanted to. I lined these up with, again, one of those guide wires that I showed you guys before. That way everything was nicely aligned when I went to project. And I started at the very beginning with my 16 by 24 check. Now, I really liked doing it this way, and that's probably how I'm going to keep doing it, is just put it kind of at the top of my artboard, and then I can scroll down onto the pattern. What I've done other times is made it a layer. And so I'll show you in a second how to make that. which again, I think I've shown you before, but I'll go ahead and do again. So on this one, I was smart and I laid out my fabric in the direction that it projects, so that when I opened this in Adobe, all I had to do was scroll, set my zoom and scroll. Everything was exactly, you know, aligned the way I wanted it to. On this one, I had everything separate, but my fabric was the wrong way for how I use my projector, right? Our projectors project in a landscape, so we want the fabric to be landscape. Not a huge deal to rotate when you're in Adobe, but if you're gonna have to rotate it anyways, why not do it first? So to do that, I'll show you on this gray one. I highlighted everything, and then you can rotate it the way you want it. And then if you really want it to be lined up in the middle of your page, for some reason I really want that, you make sure it's a group so that it will move it all as one group. And then you tell it align center and align vertical. If you don't make it a group first, it will, let's see, can I show you with this one? Whoa, what am I doing? Yeah, those are individual. Okay, watch what happens whenever I tell it to align it. It does each piece individually, so that's not what we wanted at all. All right. So that's what makes sense to me, is to have it rotated the direction that I project it. That way I don't have to rotate once I'm in Adobe. You can, in the free Adobe. It's not a big deal. They trick you with the fun little icons that make so much sense and tell you have to pay to use them. But as long as you click on the actual words instead, you don't have to pay. I just think it's easier to do it before I get to Adobe, so I don't have to fuss with it once I'm there. All right, so the calibration check square. I like to rather than give myself a grid that is frankly just kind of annoying, I like to give myself a 16 by 24 inch box. And I literally always do it, so I don't even always label it, because if I have a box there, it's 16 by 24. Because if that box is within a 1/4 inch, then you're golden. So in my brain, as long as that one is close enough, then it's no big deal. So that's my check box. So what I do is I just draw it with a rectangle. And in fact, here, I'm not going to show you on this one. I'll show you over here. So over there, I made it its own special thing up at the top of the page to just scroll through. But let's say that I want to make it its own layer in this artboard. So I go over here and add a layer just like we did before. And I'm going to call the layer calibration check. And I'm going to grab a rectangle. I'm going to just draw whatever random shape I want to. And then I go over here and I tell it that the width should be 24 and the height should be 16. And I really like making it a color that is going to be very obvious. Kind of like this. But you can make it whatever color you want to. And I mean, honestly, I can stick it right over the top of that. And it's totally fine, because when I go to project it in Adobe, it will keep this layer. And so I can just turn that layer off in Adobe and turn it back on. Or I can say, I don't want to have to turn it off and on later, and do that. Now, say you want to label this box. You go over here and you click on the text box, and you give yourself a text box, and you tell it that it's a 16 by 24 inch box. And then I'm going to use Control A to highlight all of that. And I can make this font as big as I want. If I want it even bigger, then it gives me an option for there. I can type in something bigger. Now, again, you have to change it over there if it's more than one line. And I can make that kind of match up close to it if I want to. I can center it in there. I can put it above. Whatever makes you happy for doing that. And it's still inside that layer, so it will still all turn off and back on at the same time. All right, we talked about font. We talked about artboards versus just needing 2 pages. calibration check square. We rotated for projecting. All right, let's talk about the choices. I'm going to use, since I kind of messed with this one and I'm not going to save it, I'm going to go over here to this one that's not so messed with, to talk about how we can export or zoom in Adobe. I'm sorry, in Affinity Designer to project. So for me, I'm not going to open up Adobe right now because my computer is already doing a lot of things at once. But if you think about Adobe, when you're projecting with it, the menus and things are still fairly large and easy to see and easy to use. And it's really easy to turn off the stuff, the fluff around the outside here, which is that Control L that makes it go full screen, or even just collapsing the menus down. And you're able to see a lot of your workspace all at once. In my opinion, Affinity Designer has all this workspace that is not easy to make go away. And there might be a way to make it go full screen now that I'm saying things. I mean, I'm not 100% sure. I mean, there's different view modes here, so sure, there might be a way to make it go full screen. But I don't easily know it. And if I do end up needing to right-click and rotate, if I right-click here, there's lots of options versus the fewer options in Adobe. I'm more familiar with Adobe. I've been using it on my projector. I can kind of guess where things are. Even if I can't fully see that file up at the top, I can kind of guess where it is and use it. I don't know. To me, it's just easier to be in Adobe. There's absolutely nothing wrong with projecting straight from Affinity Designer. If you want to do that, go for it. And in fact, when I'm tracing something off into Adobe, or whenever I'm maybe wanting to make some adjustments as I go, then it makes sense to project from Affinity Designer. Just for normal cutting though, for me, and perhaps this is just me being a creature of habit, I think it's easier to export as PDF and open in Adobe. So to export, we go to File, Export. I did an SVG last, so let me make sure it says PDF. And I can make it, whatever I want it to be. I don't want it to be flattened, but a digital is fine. And here, I need to make sure to tell it to do the whole document so that it's not just doing page 1 or page 2. Other times you may only want one of them to export. It's up to you. In fact, when we get to the circle skirts, I can show you why maybe you might want to only export one page. And then you can tell it to not export hidden layers or to export them. That's kind of depends on what you're doing. And then you click export. And it'll bring up a thing and ask you to save it. And so then you can hit save, and then you open it up, and it opens in Adobe just like any other PDF. I'm not going to actually do that right this second. However, if you want to project straight from Affinity Designer, you're going to have to make sure that you're zoomed correctly first. So if you go down here to the bottom, to this hourglass, you get the zoom tool. And you can do this in different units as well. And that changed this right here. But what we're using is this right here. So it's kind of, you don't necessarily need to. You can type in here and get it to be a whole number, but did you see just now when I did 0.5, it rounded it. It won't let you do a percentage, but you can type it and get to a whole percentage number, which for what we're doing, maybe that's good enough. Maybe it's not. You'll have to kind of play with your own projector setup to see if that's close enough for you or not. So then, right here I've got that 14%, and then I can put my check there and see if that is actually the right size. I sincerely doubt that it would be, but whatever. It'd probably be like, well, 23.4 is what I normally have to type for that projector that I usually use, which of course 0.4 doesn't translate here. But there we go. I've got my check here, and I would be able to see if that was projecting correctly or not. And then I would know if I could, use that projector. All right, that was everything there. We will get to the circle skirts after I check to see if you guys have questions. Okay, so yeah, if you haven't watched all the videos before, then there's probably some things in here that are not making much sense. I will go show you how I made the fabric. Elizabeth, is there anything specific you need me to go back and cover? I can. Oh, I never that's fine. So to make a piece of fabric, what I do is I take the rectangle tool and I make a rectangle, and then I enter the dimensions that I want to work within. Most of mine, I find that by the time I fold them in half and, you know, account for the selvage and everything, maybe I have about 28 inches of usable space. And to be fair, I only really have 24 inches of cutting space because of the limitation of my mat. So maybe I want to make it only 24. And then let's say I have a yard of the fabric, so that'd be 36 inches. So then I've got a rectangle right here that would be my fabric. And so then I would go and I would usually color it a little bit so that I can just sort of see as I'm working with it. I can also make the, my dog is snoring. I don't know if you guys can hear that. I can also make the line around it thicker or less thick. Whatever makes sense for what I'm doing. And then if I want to label it, I can do just like I did before and make that text box and label it like that. And then I just would put the pattern pieces onto it to, you know, show how I would actually cut it out. And what I will also do sometimes is I'll either label with a text box, I'll either label fold right here, or if I want it to be double folded, I might give myself, I don't know why I clicked that right there, I want that to be solid, a line and make my line dashed, and then that'll show me where to fold my fold to. Just sometimes it makes more sense to do it that way when I'm pattern Tetrising and saving what fabric I can. All right, let me check on you guys again. Awesome, great, Elizabeth. I'm glad that was helpful. Okay, so if we are all ready to move on, I am going to show how I patterned these circle skirts, and then wrap things up. We're about halfway through the time, a little bit more than halfway through the time I have. All right. You're welcome. Okay. So over here, first of all, I'm not going into all of the math that takes place to make a circle skirt pattern, because it's a lot, and Mariah Pattie has already covered it in the video I linked below, and I feel like she did a really good job, and I don't want to step on the toes of what she did. So what I did was I took a screenshot of this because she recommended that I do it, that anybody watching do it, but then I ended up not needing it. And then because I didn't need it because I was working here digitally, And so I needed to work with decimals the same. All right, pup, settle. Okay, I needed to work with decimals the same as the calculator would spit out. If you are doing it with a ruler, then obviously you're going to need to go back and forth between the decimals that the calculator spits out and the fractions that are on your ruler. And then I took a screenshot of her chart and recreated it. I used a 40-inch waist, mostly because that made my math easier, I thought. I'm not so sure that it did in the end. And honestly, I used a calculator so much that it didn't really matter. But that will work for around my belly button area, as my actual waist is smaller but higher. So I don't know if I'm going to actually use these patterns or not. But it was really fun to practice. That's the bottom line there. And then I made the length 29 inches plus a 1-inch hem, which was actually a total of 30 inches as I patterned. And then I took her fitted, gathered, pleated plan. So basically what she was saying is if she makes one that's fitted at the waist, she was going to use 100% of her waist measurement. She might make a gathered pattern that would be 200% of her waist measurement and then gathered down. Or maybe she wanted 300% of her waist measurement and making that pleated. So I just went with that for this math portion here. And that was easy math because you're patterning a quarter of the pattern. So it was a quarter of your measurement. That math is super easy. After that, it all got complicated. So you have to look at, you know what? Let me just show you quickly. When you make a circle skirt, you're making, and I'm just going to make this 45, 45, just so that it's, I guess it makes more sense to do it 40, doesn't it? So you're cutting out a circle right here from your fabric that's for your waist. And then you're cutting out another circle. Let's call this one 70 and 70. And let me send this to the back. Arrange. Move to back. I'll go over all of that again in just a minute when I actually start patterning something. I'm just illustrating right this second. So you cut out one circle for your waist, and then you cut out another circle for your hem. And so if we make, here, let me make this guy, maybe not. I want you to be, there, nope. All right, guys, hold on. I've lost it. All right, you be colored on the inside. You be not. You are, oh, because it's clear. That's why that didn't work. There we go. All right. Phew, that made sense now. Let me try again. When you're making a circle skirt, you cut out a circle for your waist right here. And then you cut out another circle for your hem right here. And that's your circle. I'm sorry, that's your skirt. This gray right here would be my fabric. That would be my skirt. And, you know, it would hang from my waist down to the hem. And generally when you pattern it, you pattern a quarter of it. Just here, we'll use these little guys to approximate where a quarter is. You pattern a quarter of it and then you cut it on a double fold, or you cut it out singly and piece it together, depending on how your fabric works out, to give you that full circle. But you can also do 3/4 circle skirts and half circle skirts and quarter circle skirts and basically any amount of size that you want, and it will make it more or less full and flared. This is something that Mariah does a really good job of visualizing and showing pictures of in her videos, so I'm not going to go any further into that. But it's helpful to visualize what we're working for to show you how I got there. So I have 2 pattern pieces done. The full circle skirt, and I labeled it for myself here. So this is a full circle skirt. It's a quarter of the pattern. It's the fitted waist. Which was 40 inches. It's a 29-inch length with a 1-inch hem, and it has a 1/2-inch seam allowance all around it. And I can either cut 4 exactly as is, or cut 2 on a single fold. And if I cut it on a fold, then I'm going to use my seam line as my... Love you too, buddy. As my fold line, because I won't need the seam allowance. Or if it's a double fold, the other way. Both seam lines would be used as fold lines. Now I feel like if you've never worked with a circle skirt before, I have completely lost you. And that's okay. Go back and watch Mariah's video. Look at some circle skirt patterns that you've made before that were already drafted, and I think all of it will make sense. But this was all stuff I had to think through as I was figuring out how to pattern this last night. Or yesterday afternoon. And then I also figured out how to do the quarter circle skirt. This is also the fitted waist. And,
but I have a toy for me and Vicky.
Okay. This is all exactly the same here. And now, this pattern you would be able to cut out a little more easily. And I said double fold, but that doesn't really work because of the way this pattern works. You would have to do 2 cut along the 1 fold, because that's my 90-degree corner. And here I have 2. Again, I feel like I'm losing people. Let me move on. So the angles right here, I just took from Mariah Pattie. And they're standard practice, but I took from her video what she had figured out. And then I used the link that she provided in her video to go to a website that allowed me to enter in the, 40, 80, or 120 circumference of the inner circle. And then it spit out for me the diameter and the radius. And then as we went to... So, again, if you go watch her video, a lot more of this math will make sense. But as you go through, your circumference changes based on your waist measurement and how much of the circle you're drafting. And so I went, again, used that website to get the diameter and the radius. Now, when she's doing it, she only looks for the radius because she's drafting by hand, and that's what makes sense. When you're drafting it this way, you need the diameter. So, all right. I'm going to make a circle skirt. I'm just going to pattern 1, and then we'll wrap this video up. Before I do that, I'm going to go see if anybody is just screaming for help, because that was a lot. All right. It may be that nobody's even watching anymore, because, like I said, that was a lot. But here we go. I don't want this to be white. I want to be able to see it a little bit. All right, there we go. I'm going to start with a circle. What shall I draft? Let's do a fitted half circle. So I'm going to start with a circle, and I just draw whatever I want to. It doesn't matter what size it is, because I'm going to type down here to get it specific. So if I'm doing a half circle fitted, then my circumference is 80. Okay, so that's the circumference of my waist circle, because I'm only going to end up using half of this circle, which will give me 40 to surround my waist, okay? Hopefully this is still making sense. And then, so this is the inside of the donut. This is the inner circle that will be my waist size. Now I need to draw the circle that will be the outside. So I'm going to make a new circle, and it's going to be, so I need a 30 inches for the length of the skirt, but I have to add that to the diameter of my inside circle. So, and then I have to do it, it has to be twice. It needs to be 30 inches around all the way around the outside. So 80 plus 60 is, I'm completely blanking, 24. 14, 140. 140. Okay. And I can tell this to go to the back so that I can see my little circle again, and I can click both of them and line them up in the center. And I can double check that, oops, hold on. Everything is dashed line still. Okay. I can double check this. I can draw a line from that circle, and I'm holding down the shift key so that it's a straight line to that circle. And when I go over to move tool, it'll tell me the length of that line. It's a hair off, but that's basically 30 inches. So that's my 30-inch length of my skirt. Woohoo, I did it. That's a lot of math. Okay, so that's great. That's where my finished edge needs to be, and that's actually my cut edge. But I want to make sure I've got these other, so if that is my finished edge, I need my cut edge, and if that's my cut edge, I need my finished edge. So if you try to go add this later, you make yourself absolutely crazy. So we add this now. So in order to do that, I'm going to copy and paste this circle, and I want it to be in an inch smaller each way, which will give me a 1/2 inch allowance all the way around. So I'm going to make that 79 by 79. And then I'm going to copy and paste this circle, and I want this to be an inch smaller all the way around. So I'm going to take off 2 inches, make it 138, 138. And then I'm going to highlight all 4 of these circles, and I'm going to align them before we go any further. And I'm going to also count to make sure that I can see 4 lines. Yes. Okay. And now, to make it a little bit more obvious for myself, I'm going to take so this is my cut line right here, and that's my seam allowance line. So I'm going to give myself a little visual reminder. That's my cut line there, and that's my hem allowance line. So there's my visual reminder there. All right. So basically, this is my skirt. Like, you know, if I could project this and have a piece of fabric big enough to cut this, well, that's not true because I'm doing a half circle. But if I could chop this in half and project it and have fabric big enough and a projection big enough to do it, I can do that. But my projection's not that big, and my fabric's probably not that big either. So we want to break it down to a 1/4 of it. So the first thing we have to do is basically chop off half of our circle because we're only needing half of it. So I'm just going to draw a line, and then I'm going to highlight all of it again. Come on, highlight my line. And I'm going to align it all to the center again. All right, so this line is perfectly cutting this in half. And I'm going to go up, and I'm going to double click on this to work on the nodes. Oh wait, it's a circle, not a curve. That's fine. I can convert to curves. And I'm going to do that for all of my circles quickly. All right, now I can do this. So I'm going to go in and see I've got a node right there, and I've got a node right there. Generally, they're kind of at those 1/4 points anyways. I didn't mean to add you. No. All right, fine, you stay there. All right, I am going to tell right here for that to break the curve there. And then I'm going to tell for this to break the curve here. And I'm going to keep going down all the way down this line. And everywhere this line intersects, I am going to break the curve of the circle. I should have done a fitted one rather than a... It's fine though. All right. All right, so then we can go ahead and delete basically everything on this side. All right. That's the final pattern we're going to want. And we want to pattern just a little bit of that. So a half circle skirt, you want to pattern at 45 degrees because half of this is 45 degrees. So I'm going to make another line and I'm going to just randomly draw it here. And then I can highlight everything again and line it. Oops, didn't think about that. We only want to line it up that way. There we go. And then we can tell this that we want it to be a 45-degree angle. I don't like that. For some reason, it makes me crazy to go that way. So I'm going to tell it to go the other way. I'm going to tell it negative 45 degrees. And that actually moved it. Let's see. What did I do before to get this right? Oh, I remember. Okay. So I want to draw the line. And I'm going to make... I don't know what I just did. Stop doing that. Make a line. There we go. I want to make that line the 30 inches of my hem plus the radius of my circle. So it'll go from my cut line to the middle. So, whoa. So my radius over here, so it's 30 inches plus whatever that radius is. The radius is 12.7, so that's 42.7. All right. And we'll go ahead and make this 45 degrees. And now we can go over here and we can line it up. Well, actually, I guess I do want it to be a positive 45 degrees and work at the top. I did this a little bit differently than I did the other ones, I think. Not on purpose, but it's fine. All right, so I'm going to zoom. I'm going to zoom in and make sure that I line this up on the bottom edge there. And then I'm going to sort of move it until it's lining up on both edges. This is not perfect at all, but it was the best way I could figure out to try to get remotely accurate. So all right, now, yep, okay. So this is 45 degrees here, and that's 90 degrees there. And if I want them to both be 45 degrees, basically this is a fold line right now. I can just mirror it in a minute and fix that. So let's look at this, which is kind of the same thing over here. Like I could just mirror that. That's basically a fold line right now. All right, if I get my node tool, I'm going to have to add nodes this time, but I can add nodes and break the curve anywhere these intersect. Now, in something like Adobe where you can actually measure curved lines, it might make more sense to do this totally differently and measure your curved lines and all of that. Since you can't measure curved lines in Affinity Designer, it made more sense to me to make the circles exactly. And here, I need to also cut this line right here. And that way I could get my measurements correct and not have to worry about measuring the curved lines. So I can go through and delete all the extraneous parts now. And then you're kind of left with these funny filled areas. I just highlight all of it and go tell it to make it no fill, and that solves that. And then I can make this line, in fact, as a nice little check, we can make this line 30 inches and see if we can line it up with the top and the bottom. Oh, so apparently I'm a little bit off. Oh, because it's, hold on, 30.5, because we've got a hem allowance at the top. There, that should be right now. Yay, it is. Okay. And that's should be, yeah. Okay. So that gives us the part up here. We can rotate that so it looks like the other ones. So that is like half of that circle skirt. It's a quarter piece of the pattern. So we bring that over here. And actually, you know what? It's not a quarter piece because that is no way that's long enough. We need it to be 45 degrees on both sides. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy and paste, and then we're going to flip the paste and put it together up here until it's lined up together. And somehow I got off this way. There we go. All right, that's close enough for me right now. And then I was realizing earlier, or last night when I was working on this, that now you need to measure that curved piece. But measuring a curve on Affinity Designer is kind of a pain. And literally the best way to figure it out, the best way to do it that I figured out last night, was to take the curve that you needed to measure, and remember it would be your seam line, not your cut line, and copy it and put it somewhere over here so that you could have it all by itself. Sometimes you need to kind of rotate it so it's working with kind of the landscape width of your screen. And you go over to zoom and you make it 100%, and you kind of center it in your screen there, and then you use a physical measuring tool and measure physically on your screen to see, does that line equal the 10 inches that it should, because that's a quarter of the pattern that I'm working on. And this one does. The other one I was working on just now probably does not, because I feel like I messed up somewhere over there, but that's okay. Anyway, I felt like this was a lot of fun. This was a lot of math and a lot of craziness and a lot of new stuff I haven't done with Affinity Designer yet. But it was really cool to see the possibilities. And so I could, you know, pattern out all 12 skirts here, and just have them. And if I wanted to make a circle skirt, I could be like, hey, this is my pattern. This is my circle skirt. Now this is obviously for woven because it doesn't have any negative ease. And I don't do a lot of woven sewing. So really most of this was just an exercise in what can I figure out how to use Affinity Designer for. But it was really fun. It was really cool. And it really showed me the huge possibilities that we have with Affinity Designer and a projector. And yeah, you can do all this on paper, totally. But maybe this is just a different way to do it that ends up working out for some people better. All right, so, oh good, I'm glad I didn't totally lose everybody. All right, it is 8:59, and I try to wrap this up by 9 so I can get my son in bed. So, is there any questions? If it's about the math of circle skirts, please just go watch Mariah's video because it makes my head hurt too. But like I said, I think it just really shows all of the possibilities that we have now that we can sort of manipulate these things in Affinity Designer. All right, so I'm going to start my wrap-up spiel, and if anybody is left and has a question or a comment, go ahead and leave it, and I'll get to those before I totally close things down. All right, so once again, next Sunday, the 27th of February, the 27th of February, the last Sunday in February, in my Facebook group, link in the description box, www.facebook.com/groups/dailysews, DAILEYSEWS. You can join, and there will be a room, and so we can see each other's faces and see each other's screens and work through any troubleshooting that you guys might have. That will be the complete wrap-up for this series, and then we will move on to some other things. Now, there's a lot more in Affinity Designer for me to learn. There's a lot more that I've already figured out that I need to show you guys, but it will be better done not completely on my computer. I'll have some video of me working at the projector too, and that's really hard to do live. And if I'm not doing it live, then I've got to do some editing. So that's sort of where things have been. Still have so many videos in my list of videos I want to get done, and so little time to do it. So I'm going to kind of shift gears, working more towards getting some edited videos done now. Those will definitely take longer to get out than these live ones do, but I think it's worth it for the information I can share that way. All right. I think that was all of my things to say. Oh, you're welcome, guys. Thank you so much for sticking through even that really mathy part that I guess I feel less sure of myself with that part than I did with the rest, just because so much of it is the math part. So thank you guys. Thank you so much for watching these videos. I am going to, I have already gone back and edited very lightly. The first video, I need to do it for these other three, and I'll get those out in the lightly edited versions, just make it a little bit easier for people to come back and watch later. And then, like I said, work on some edited video. I really need to get this short throw projector back up and working, and lots of other things I need to get done. So, all right, well, thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight and those other nights too. If you need to go back and watch videos, there's links in the description box. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll hope to catch you in my group room next week. And I think that's it. Good night.